Welcome back. No one wants any video online really to start with sort of an update on the person's life or them talking about things that's not the video. And yet I do feel the need to have a little asterisk explaining my process here. I've done some research online. Apparently this sort of is a format on YouTube, and people kind of just read you a bedtime story and tuck you in and kiss you on the forehead goodnight. But apparently when people do that, they read the stories, they take notes on the stories, and then they read you a bedtime story. This is just me reading it for the first time. Let's get on to Worm, Part 2. And I read 6 chapters last time, right? So I'll probably do about 6 chapters again. That felt right. That was like a nice hour-long video. It's a nice good time for a bedtime story. I guess I'm just calling it that now. Looking at how much we have to do today. That'll be half a section. We're not going to go cleanly through a section because we still have to do the interlude from part 1 and then to about 2.05. So we'll see how that goes. Should I do a last time section? Last time on, what's the guy's name? Who wrote this? Wild, it's like a pen name. Writer of Worm. Last time on John McCrae's Worm. There was a girl. I could sing it. Everyone hates when I sing, but I love singing things. Worm was about a girl named Taylor Sherbert. She was very bluntly bullied in school, like she was in a diary of a wimpy kid. I assume I've never read the novel. She used her bug powers to make a super suit, and then she fought the Asians. That's what happened. Worm, Section 1, Interlude. We don't know how long he had been there, suspended in the air above the Atlantic Ocean. On May 20th, 1982, no, that's a little weirdly transition there. An ocean liner is crossing from Plymouth to Boston when they see a big naked man floating in the sky. A big golden naked man floating in the sky, which really makes me have Dr. Manhattan vibes. It's immediately my thought. Everyone on the ocean liner gets together and they vote. They have a little tribal council there and decide, we're going to go have a better look, that's a little weird. Like, it's not man overboard. It's like something in the horizon. You almost need to say like he's X close to the boat so we can like have a picture in our head. There's a guy somewhere in the sky, and these people who are busy on the boat, they're like got jobs to do and they're traveling and whatnot. They're like, yeah, let's just go check that out. I mean, I guess he must have been pretty close. And then we have some nice flavor with some of the commentaries. You have one of the witnesses, which almost makes it, this really does feel like Watchmen in conception, where you have like that aside at the end of the chapter that's just world building, and it's kind of like really well built out with the characters and stuff. The boat trip was a final journey for me. I had cancer and I wasn't brave enough to face it. I can't believe I'm admitting this in front of a camera, but I was going back to Boston, where I was born, to end things myself. After I met him, I changed my mind. Didn't matter anyway. I went to a doctor and he said there was no sign I ever had the disease. Which, that's a really great way to segue like superpowers and like, oh, something's going weird here. Also, it's just a nice level of detail to add to just a random bystander. I'm assuming they're a random bystander going forward. And as I'm reading on and getting these accounts here, it does kind of make sense that like the way it was so distantly presented at first, going back to what I just said about you get questions but then you get answers, because this is like a news account. This is like people looking back on this important event. So they're not going to like think about the logistics and think about telling us how far away they are, although that part was written in third person. The Golden Man would reappear several more times in the coming months and years. At some point, he donned clothing. At first, a sheet worn over one shoulder and pinned at either side of the waist. Then more conventional clothes. In 1999, he donned the white bodysuit he still wears today. Which is, once again, this is very Dr. Manhattan for me right now. For more than a decade, we have wondered, where did our Golden Man get these things? Who was he in contact with? Wait, what? You see a man that can fly and has mystical ability, cancer-curing abilities, and then you see him a decade later, he's wearing clothes, and you go, how in the world did he get those clothes? Like, out of all the things we've seen, that is the part any human can easily do, is wear clothes and get clothes. Even if you don't have money, it's not that hard to steal clothes. And slowly, the Golden Man starts getting involved in human affairs, intervening in crises, from car accidents to natural disasters. He used his abilities to save us all. A flash of light to freeze water, reinforcing a levee stressed by a hurricane. A terrorist act averted. Nice descriptive powers there. A serial murderer caught. A volcano quelled. Quelled. I knew the definition of quelled. Put an end to, typically by the use of force. Subdue or silence someone. I don't know, it's still like a weird use. Like, I always think of like quelled as against a person or like a group of people. It's strange. Tell me how much of a stickler I am in the comments. He has been known to speak just once in 30 years after extinguishing widespread fire in Alexandrovsk. He paused to survey the scene and be sure no blazes remained. A reporter spoke to him and asked, Kto vi? What are you? Dos vidonia. Don't gitni anya. These are all in quotation marks outside of the first. No, it's all in quotation marks. Okay. Who's speaking? Like, once again, Watchmen is what I'm using for my basis for understanding this chapter right here. Like, normally those chapters are prefaced with, this is from the log books of X and Y, and why don't I show you? You get like sections, and it's like, here's an excerpt from Hollis Mason's autobiography. And you're like, okay, I understand who's speaking here. Someone's speaking. This is an excerpt from something. I'm not sure what. Shocking the world, caught on camera in a scene replayed innumerable times, he answered in a voice that sounded as though it might never have uttered a sound before, barely audible. He told her, Scion, which means like descendant or child or comes from. It became the name we used for him. Ironic, because we took a word that meant descendant, heyo, and used it to name the first of many superpowered individuals. Parahumans, to appear across Earth. Which, I'm not sure if that's ironic. You just used the word someone gave you. If you came up with that word yourself, it'd be a little ironic, but also, isn't that kind of weird? Like, everyone was named after, the name for superheroes was named after this guy, but that's just, they asked, what are you, didn't they? Yeah, I guess that tracks, because I was thinking like Superman comes down, what are you, what are you? And he's like, I'm Superman. I'm like, all right. All our superheroes are now called Supermen. But I guess who are you and what are you are different questions. And so, to sum up some of this, 5 years after the first Superman appeared, superheroes started appearing all across the world. Oh, and then we have a nice line. This is a nice line. Though the villains followed soon after, it was the heroes who shattered any illusions of the parahumans being divine figures. And then I'm immediately disappointed because I thought there was going to be some sort of like critical commentary that is, so popular these days. But apparently there's a superhero named Vicar, who he gets hit in the head and dies. I'm like, oh, they're not divine, which, yeah, I thought they were going to do something bad to say, oh, these people aren't heroes. But I guess that's what a villain is, so maybe I'm wrong. But then you would have known them as children and be like, these people didn't just appear from anywhere. There's Sally down the street. She's a superhero now. We know she's not divine. Now, a couple of pages in, we finally get our framing device where Danny Hebert, not Sherbert. Danny Hebert, the Taylor's father, was watching TV. He is waiting for his daughter to come home at 3 a.m, which I guess we can then assume that this is an immediate, despite being interlude, this is like right after the events that we just saw, pretty much right after where we just left off. And this goes on for a while. He misses his wife. He kind of builds him up as being a little more schlubby and balding and just, I guess he's pitiable. Like, is that what we're going for? He thinks that she's either out for a run, which, that might sound unbelievable. I've been out for many runs at like 1 a.m. If you can't sleep, just go running if you don't live in the worst neighborhood, although she probably lives in a not great neighborhood. And then maybe he thinks she's under drugs, under the influence of drugs, which she doesn't really seem the type, but, worried about your kid being bullied, whatever. Maybe they're doing drugs or you can do drugs in your own house. I guess buying drugs. And then we find out some kind of weird backstory here where apparently Taylor was bullied to the point where she was put in a psychiatric hospital, and they actually sued the school and got money for their pain and suffering. I guess he's not so much worried about drugs. He's worried about bullies luring her out, which is weird. That's weird bully behavior. Like, even Stephen King bullies don't, like, blackmail you to get you out of your house at 2 or 3 in the morning. They just bully you. Like, so portrayal of bullies as criminal masterminds. We've got a plan, and it specifically requires you to be out of your house at 2:30 in the morning. Sure. And once again, this carries on in sort of self-pity and self-reflection for a while until, what do you know? There's a sound downstairs. He finds his daughter making peanut butter sandwiches, jelly sandwiches in the kitchen. No, just jam and toast, sorry. I'm a bad host here. There was no peanut butter involved. Which we get some weird sort of like backstory for the father, where like his father was a big man and abusive, and he doesn't want to put that on his daughter, and he doesn't want to be the same path. Like, that's interesting, I guess. I mean, he's kind of like a pathetic character overall. It's something to make us like. I don't know. It doesn't make me like him. Like, if you establish that your character is like pathetic, the way to sort of surprise the audience and make us more engaged with him isn't to have him do something that, you know, is in keeping with that character trait, to say that he doesn't have a spine and won't like engage with people. I'm not saying the opposite would be good. I don't want him to beat his daughter, which, you know, he probably couldn't. But like him actually having a spine and being a good discipliner would be more endearing. And that's sort of where I'm going to leave off for the interlude there, because that's pretty much all that happens. And maybe I shouldn't have brushed over the father character so much, but he doesn't seem important yet. And, you know, we laid the foundation, at least. We understand the basics. Insinuation, Chapter 2.1, or Section 2, Chapter 1. Insinuation. I woke to the muffled sound of the radio in the bathroom. Reaching over to my alarm clock, I turned it around. 6:28, which made today a weekday like any other. My alarm was set for 6:30, but I almost never needed it, because my dad was always in the shower at the same time. Routines define us. I thought they were... I read all that out loud, which, because I have a thing personally where if I set an alarm for something important coming up that I can't miss, work or what have you, I will wake up 2 minutes earlier, just like this. So I thought that's what the writer was saying, and there was some, you know, kindred spirits there. But apparently it's just her dad's in the shower, if I'm reading that right. And I'm kind of a few pages in now, and just kind of like basic getting ready for the day stuff. I'm not sure if this is the next morning. I wouldn't assume it's the next morning. They'd make like a bigger deal of her being tired, only getting 3 hours of sleep. Okay, and then here we go. I finally found something that seems relevant enough to talk about here. She's talking about someone that she seems to know by the name of Jerry. And Jerry has become a henchman of video game theme villains Uber and Leet, which is... it's kind of embarrassing. And it's also kind of weird with the insinuation just being like villain work is so commonplace that it's just something you can be like, oh, that's just what Bob down the street's doing nowadays. He's a henchman. That's a little goofy if we're going to divert from Watchmen. Like, Watchmen like knew and understood the concept of being a villain in actually like a real world was silly. And this is sort of going more like the Justice League, Justice Fringe route, where it's just like, you know, gotta pay the bills. Like, being a hench, that has to be a criminal. That's a crime, right? Villains are criminals. So why would you be talking to people who know you about being a criminal? It's on your LinkedIn. Organized crime. I mean, I guess if there's so much crime the police can't keep up, but... I heard you come in late last night, he said. I just gave him a small nod and took another bite. I should be doing a voice right. I heard you come in last night. I don't want to just use my normal voice for like the pathetic guy that I don't like, but it's like the most natural one for him. Like, if I go deeper or higher, it isn't. I gave him a small nod and took another bite of French toast, even as my heart rate tripled and my mind searched for excuses. Like I said, I finally opened my mouth looking down at my plate. I just couldn't sleep. I couldn't get my thoughts to settle down. So, okay, this is the night, or this is the morning after, and she is apparently on 3 hours of sleep, which I guess It's admirable they didn't play that up too much because, you know, talking about how tired someone is boring. But at the same time, it would have been nice to know that in context. And really, they continue to have the conversation you thought they were going to have last night. He kind of let it go because he didn't want to be his father, but it's like, we have to talk about it. And they kind of just start talking about all of his fears about school. So it's kind of repetitive in a way. I guess the point of that second half of the interlude was just to give us perspective of his father. But I mean, we're getting that perspective right here, I feel like. And this has to come back. They're going to cross a line. She's going to cross the line at some point, and he's going to hit her. Prediction number 1 of the day. As we reach the end of the chapter here, we have a fun little bit. Taylor, have you been smoking? I shook my head. Your hair is burnt at the ends there. I thought back to the previous night, getting hit in the back by one of Lung's blasts of flames. Shrugging, I suggested stove, maybe? Be safe, my dad said, emphasizing each word. I took that as my cue to go, heading outside doors and breaking into an all-out run the moment I was past the chain link gate at the side of the house. And I read that final boring part out because it's like, that's kind of like a weird reaction where the father's not even acknowledging it because it's like, it's so obviously a lie on her part, where the father would just like, normally the father would just be like quiet and just like, oh, okay. You would get by osmosis that he just didn't believe you because it's stupid. But no, I guess we're just brushing over it, and there's no indication that he doesn't believe her. Okay, chapter 2.2, that's how I'm going to name them. Chapter 2.2 starts out, which is the basics again. She's going to school. She's super tired. She had a fight last night. We got it. She's in computer class. Her bullies aren't there. And there's a fun sort of dated reference here from, the time period from which this came, where she says, it's a poor school. Most of the students are computer illiterate because they don't have money for computers, which nowadays, I mean, is there anyone under the age of 50 who doesn't know how to use a computer, regardless of your access to money? Because, I mean, that's everywhere. That is life. By contrast, I was in the group that was learning some basic programming and spreadsheets, which, I don't know, I never did that in high school. The go-to place for news and discussion on capes was Parahumans Online, which, before I finish that paragraph, that's cute that, obviously she's about to read about her exploits last night or updates regarding the plot or what's going to happen in the future. And so instead of just having a scene where she goes to the library, it's like, she's in class and she's doing it. It's a really small commendation, but at least there was some thought put into it. I can't believe I'm talking about that. She finds the message for Brockton Bay, which is where we're at. I had the sense that either Tattletale or Gru were the leaders of the group I had run into. And this is just clicking something in my brain. Was the maker of Despicable Me a fan of Worm?
That's what she said!
Turning my attention to Tattletale, I searched the wiki. The result I got was disappointingly short, starting with the header reading, "This article is a stub. Be a hero and help us expand it." There was one sentence blurb on how she was an alleged villain active in Brockton Bay with a single blurry picture. The only new information for me was that her costume was lavender, which I guess it was dark last night. Is that the joke? Is she couldn't see the color because it was purple and dark? I don't know. Okay, so I also like the fact that these D-list villains are also super obscure. I looked up Gru. There was actually information about him, but nothing detailed or definitive. The wiki stated he had actually been active for nearly 3 years, dealing in petty crimes, such as robbing small stores and doing some work as an enforcer for those who wanted a little super-powered muscle alongside the job. Okay, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, you're the guy is now a henchman. Imagine imagine this was real life. It'd be like having a Wikipedia for gang members. They got superpowers. They're a little more important, but that's the sort of level. This guy robbed a gas station. Let's make a Wikipedia for gang members in the metro area. It's kind of goofy, but it is very much in the sort of superhero tradition of keeping stats and track records and every profiles on all the characters so you can keep track of them and what have you. Next, we have information on Hellhound, although I say information because the first two really didn't have information. Rachel Lind had never made any real attempt to hide her identity. She had apparently been homeless through most of her criminal career, just living on the streets and moving on whenever police or a cape came after her. The sightings and encounters with the homeless girl ended around a year ago. Once again, that's my point, though, right? You have pictures online. You have a wanted poster saying, this person, bring her to us. Like, how long could you stay in one place before someone recognizes you and says, police officers, wanted criminal? Maybe they don't have bounties, maybe? There's going to be bounty hunters in this world. There has to be bounty hunters. An unmasked dark-haired girl who I wouldn't call pretty. Okay, pot and kettle there. Her powers manifested when she was 14, followed almost immediately by her demolishing the foster home she had been living in, injuring her foster mother and 2 other foster children. Her power is to turn ordinary dogs. Boop, boop. Her power is to turn ordinary dogs into giant, scary dogs. Which isn't, like, the worst power. Monsters the size of a car, all muscle, bone, fang, and claw. If recognized, do not approach or provoke. The last grim member of the group was Regent. I'm already on the 4th one. Can I remember them all? Regent, Bitch/Hellhound, Gru. The first member was Tattletale. Doesn't even sound like a villain. What are you going to do? Regent has no information on his Wikipedia page. Which, shout out, Regent. Me and you in the same boat. This also kind of feels like early internet, like just experiencing Wikipedia for the first time. It's all accurate. This is made by someone who, looked at Wikipedia before, like the fan wikis, like you have a wiki for a topic. Someone who was familiar with that, but just the need to explain so much of it was like, yeah, this is before your average person maybe had used one of those. And here's a nice detail as well. She's talking about looking up lung on the wiki. She states that I had done that before as part of my research and preparation for being a superhero, which is, that's smart. I would have docked a point for not doing that. The wiki had no mention of his super hearing or him being fireproof. I debated adding it, but decided against it. There were security concerns with my submission being tracked back to the Winslow High and then to me. And once again, the gang comparison here, because he worked, as I made sure to hammer home on my last video, talking about the Asian Bad Boys, which is the ABB, which is just, I don't know, it's so silly to me. The Wikipedia page says he has 40 or 50 thugs working under him across Brockton Bay, drawn from the lines of Asian youth, where it's just like, I don't know, maybe if you Wikipedia the Bloods or the Crips, you'll have, like, how many gang members they have, but if you could just find a gang with 50 people in it, like, who's keeping track of that? Like, the police are probably, but the police aren't putting that information on Wikipedia. Who is making the Wikipedia and figuring out this man has 50? Are they doing it? Is this a villain-run Wikipedia page? It feels like it would have to be, practically. If you were Asian and lived in Brockton Bay, Long and his people expected you to either join or pay tribute one way or another. Which, that doesn't really work that way. Normally it's like based on where you're at in the city, right? It's like that area is their territory. It's not just every Asian person. You live in a rich neighborhood, you're Asian, yeah, you're paying us. And Long's 2 lieutenants, Oni Lee and Bakudo, which I made fun of the Wikipedia entries as being like something very superhero-esque and what people want to see, but, I'm reading it now because, it's relevant. It's good information to know whose powers are what. He could teleport, but when he did so, he didn't disappear. As he teleported, his original self, for lack of a better term, would stay where it was and remain active for 5 to 10 seconds before disintegrating into a cloud of carbon ash. Essentially, he would create another version of himself anywhere nearby, while the old version could stick around long enough to distract or attack you. That's interesting teleportation. And then apparently he could use that to, like, suicide bomb with the first clone that was going to die anyway. Dresses like a ninja, I guess. Dresses like Zuko from The Last Airbender on that one episode. Was it more than one episode? It was at least one episode. Second, we have Bakuda. And really, we just found out from Armor's Master in the final chapter. She makes bombs and, she held a university hostage. This is a long chapter. This is the Wikipedia chapter. Woohoo. Is it going to end like Wikipedia does? For $5 a year, you can keep me writing Wikipedia entries on superheroes. And now our heroine searches for herself, which I don't know why she would expect to have an entry And her search comes up with a villain in the UK called Pestilence, which it sounds a lot like Swarm from Spider-Man. And here she finds a message in a thread for connections for a person named Bug. And it's clearly from Tattletale, TT, trying to set up a meetup, which, this is some old school Craigslist meetups. But that ends the chapter. Section 2.3. Okay, so we're in the new class. There's bullies. I'm so ready for this chapter. If you can't tell based on my expression, which that was, looking back, that's probably one of my problems with the first section was like, I get bullying, whatever, but it's like blunt and stupid. If you're gonna do some clever bullying, really like kick it up a notch. I mentioned Stephen King earlier. When Stephen King does bullying, he goes all out. It's a little homicidal, but you remember it, and you don't just go, oh, that belongs on the CW. And she's now placed in a group with Sparky and Greg. Feels like I'm doing shot casting for a CW show now. Oh, that's fitting too. I just realized how many superhero shows they have. I would never insult this or any other novel without reading it first and call them a CW show, because that's just a line you don't cross. That is the N word of comparing fiction to something. You don't want to be a CW show. I'm going to skip over their descriptions. Maybe they'll be important and I'll come back, but I don't care. After you've had your main character fight a bunch of superheroes and get in contact with supervillains, it's like, who cares about Greg in the corner seat? Who cares? And that almost might be the author's point, funny enough, where Greg just starts talking about a video game he played. Like, just the most inane high school boy conversation ever. Where after, that has to be intentional. After what we've just been through, that's the dialogue. It's like, it's supposed to bring like a juxtaposition between her crime fighting life and her school life, right? Am I reading too much into that? I might be reading too much into that. And we get stuck with a fourth member of the group, Julia. Julia joins us, one of the bullies, which I'm just going to summarize this. Read through it. I'll be back. I'm going to summarize some of it for us because I just don't care. High school drama. What is this chapter? What is the takeaway? I could see this chapter where she's just beat this big bad gang member and she's now full of confidence, and now she's going to do something to get back at the bullies or have confidence herself because she's earned that confidence. That's just high school drama. And maybe Taylor's not there yet. But like maybe she's like on that journey. Maybe she's begun to progress. Maybe it's better than what we've seen before, where she tries something. It doesn't work, but she tries something to be confident and assertive. And the chapter ends with Mr. Gladdy keeping our heroine after class and saying, we could go to the principal and talk about the bullying, but obviously that's not super practical or even satisfying narratively, so it doesn't happen. Section 2.4. Nobody likes her. Nobody wants her here, Julia said. Yeah, I can do a Julia voice. Nobody likes her. Nobody wants her to be here. Sophia. Such a loser. That all sounds the same. Such a loser. She didn't even turn in the major project for art last Friday, Sophia responded. Is she not going to try then why is she even coming to school? This is weird. Why do the bullies care so much? This is a big school, right? Big inner city school. I get the bullying. I can justify that in my head. Why are they like taking such an interest in her? Where they're like concerned when she doesn't turn in art projects. This is weird. But like, what's the insult? It's not like, oh, did you see that girl who's like didn't wash her hair? Who has muffin tops? No, that's not their conversation. Their conversation that it's supposed to be really biting, having someone overhear it is, did you hear she didn't turn in her art project? Is that bullying? I don't know. I don't even feel like that's not even bullying. I don't know how to... And it goes on to say that she's now stuck in the room with them and they're listing off an endless series of taunts and jibes. But so far, the taunts and jibes we were literally seeing were not actually taunts or jibes. They were bookkeeping at best. Ugliest girl in our grade. They weren't even thinking about what they were saying, and a lot of insults were wildly off the mark or contradictory. Okay, I can accept that. One would say I was a slut, for example. Then another might say a guy would puke before he touched me. Well, there's still, there's some space for those both to be true. The point wasn't being witty, being smart, or being on target. It was more about delivering the feeling behind the words over and over, hammering it in. What's the feeling by telling someone you didn't turn in your homework? They wanted me to fight back because everything was stacked in their favor. It's just, what does she use to wash her face? A Brillo pad? I don't know what that is. What's a Brillo pad? A scouring pad used for cleaning dishes and made from steel wool. Okay, I know what that is. I didn't know the brand name. You could wash your face with that. It's like one of those pumice stones. Really exfoliate. Pumice stone, which is normal. Brillo pad. It's about the same. It's kind of softer, but also a little scratchier. So glad we don't have Jim with her. Can you imagine seeing her in the locker room? Gag me with the spoon, which I think you're just admitting that you would look. you would study. Says more about you than it does Taylor there. And what's good, this whole entire chapter, she's just sitting here and taking it, which is not what you want. Like, that was the first section, right? The first section, we had her getting mercilessly bullied, and it was blunt and stupid, but it's like, okay, you've established that she's bullied. She's got a problem to solve. We can root for her, right? Now, she has grown a little bit. She's done stuff, but she's still getting bullied. I mean, I understand the author at some point is going to act on this, but, like, you just not have the same chapter twice in a row. You should have seen her group fail in class just now. It was painful to watch, which was, she didn't give the presentation. Greg gave the presentation. These are really bad insults. Maybe I'm just being too cynical, and maybe John McCrae is just like the nicest guy in the world, and he doesn't know how to be mean. He doesn't know how to write insults. Oh boy. Okay, and at least she acknowledges it. If we were all guys, this scenario would be totally different. I was in the best shape of my life. I could have swung a few punches for the start, because a bloody nose or two, maybe. I know I would have lost the fight in the end, getting shoved to the ground by force of numbers and kicked while I was down, but things would have ended there, instead of dragging on like they were here. Okay, that's fair. I mean, that's probably adequate, too. If you're not allowed to use your powers, you don't have your super armor. That's a good evaluation of the circumstances. She's good tactical battle evaluation here. But, that's what I want to see. I want to see her punch someone. Like, why do they have to be a guy to punch them? You're a girl. Catfight, do it. And a few sentences later, it goes on to comment on my frustrations. If I decked Emma, she would run to the office with some fabricated story, her friends backing up her version of events. For most, ratting to the faculty was social suicide, but Emma was more or less top dog. You have no social standing. So how could it get worse? How is it social suicide? Suicide implies deaths. You're alive and then you're dead. You're already dead socially. Like, social necromancy. Of course, that's dead from alive, my metaphors. That's not good. Ignore that. Things would get worse. Emma would be seen as the victim, and girls who had previously ignored the bullying would join in on Emma's behalf. You're sitting in a group of 9 people. How many more girls can fit in a single room at one time and bully you? And she smells, one girl said lamely, like expired grape and orange juice. I don't know. I don't know what these insults are. Started off okay. You started off with an insult. That was actually a real insult. Maybe they're just supposed to be stupid bullies. Are these like, I don't know. I'm just going to skip past the bullying because there's only so many jokes I can make about it, and there's no reason to read it because it's the same thing over and over. Almost a year before we started high school, I had been at her house. The both of us eating breakfast and playing music way too loud. Emma's older sister had come downstairs with the phone. We turned down the music, and my dad had been on the other end, waiting to tell me in a broken voice that my mom had died in a car accident. Okay, maybe there's going to be some sort of reason. That'd be nice. It was a month after my mom died that Emma and I had found ourselves sitting on the bridge of a kid's play structure in the park. I admire you. I guess she's not a mean person yet. She's gonna be a mean person. I admire you, she said abruptly. Why? I responded, completely mystified about the fact that someone gorgeous and amazing and popular like her could find something to admire in me. It's good to know she always had low self-esteem, even before the bullying. The bullying was not the cause, the effect. The cause. I could remember my admission. I'm not resilient. I can hold it together during the day, but I've cried myself to sleep for it. And then, okay, they hug and they cry. And then we cut back to the present time after Taylor remembering all this, and she's crying, which that's a nice juxtaposition there, where she's crying about the memory, but they're all now laughing at her and saying, she's crying. Finally, Taylor runs away from this chapter. Oh, it is from the whole entire chapter. I said that before scrolling down. She runs away from the chapter. Chapter 2.5, which will be, yes, this is the end. This is the end of today's reading, which I would really like a nice big chapter. Like, I'm all for like cool down and setting up, but nothing has happened so far today. If you looked at Bracton Bay as a patchwork of stellar and squalor, stellar, like definition, relating to the stars, exceptionally good or outstanding. Okay, I guess that vaguely tracks, sure. If you look at Brockton Bay as a patchwork of stellar and squalor, upper class and lower class with no middle ground, then downtown was one of the nice areas. The streets and sidewalks were wide, and that meant that even with skyscrapers and every other lot, there was a great deal of blue overhead. So Taylor runs from school and runs to this nice area of town where her dad works. And she's thinking as she's running, and I don't know, she might still be crying, might not. She's thinking about Tattletale and the message and wondering, would those guys have any reason to come after her? I don't think they would. They didn't, as far as I know, they didn't see the conversation with Armsmaster. So if anything, they probably think she's more of a villain and would probably want to ally with her. I see no reason for any animosity yet between those two. Oh, I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure we're going to get there, but I think Taylor's fears are a bit unfounded here. I mean, we literally did know they thought she was a villain at first, but I'm just saying, generally speaking. You see someone in the middle of the night beat up a gang member with superpowers, and they're not like taking them to jail, they're just beating them up. Your first thought isn't going to be, that's a good guy. It's probably like, oh, it's a criminal, rival gang member. Maybe it's just a hate crime. As I thought on it, though, the notion that I might actually consider taking Tattletale up on her offer of a meeting nagged at me. The more I thought on it, the scarier the idea got, and the more it seemed to make sense. And the more it's going to happen, because that's like the only plot thread we have right now. That's, admirable. She's thinking about doing some reconnaissance, taking them up on the offer and saying, like, yeah, okay, I can learn something about you for justice. Which I guess we really haven't gotten too much into her psyche there, why she wants to be a superhero. Like, obviously, like, a supervillain would be kind of goofy. Like, I don't see anything like that, bully or not. But, like, what is her, like, thrust to want to be a superhero? Just, have we seen that yet? I don't know. I feel like that's not established. Like her, like the mother. The mother died texting and driving. She wasn't like hit by a drunk driver, and then Taylor said like, "Oh no, the world is rotten. I need to clean it up." I don't know. I get on a surface level. I get it, where it's like I have superpowers. It'd be fun to be a superhero, super awesome. But like interpersonally, why does she care? Now we're at the library. She sits down at the computer and responds. This is like the opposite of what I was talking about when I was like, oh, she's in a computer class. She didn't just go sit down at a computer. This is the opposite of that. A drop-down menu appeared, and I chose send private message. Okay, and she's responding to the Tattletale Wikipedia post, fan wiki, whatever. And this is weird, right? Because like, why didn't she just send it before? Because normally, like structurally, she'd have seen that in class and said, "No, I'm not going to get involved in that." And then something would happen as a catalyst, where she then says, "Okay, screw it, we're doing this." And that, I mean, bullying happened, but bullying has always happened, and this is not like a reaction to the bullying. So like, there could be, I'm saying this section so far has not been great, and you could really punch it up here. You could do things. You could start with her being like, "No, I'm not getting involved. That's insane. I barely got out alive last night." And then something happening
saying, yeah, screw it. Where maybe she does stand up to her bullies and she just gets beat down 2-1, 2-1-9 or whatever. And then she says, you know what? Something has to change. I'm taking the initiative in my life where I can. Say yes. And we have some more smart writing here as she's responding to the message where she thinks to herself, I need proof. I need to make sure this isn't a trap laid by someone like Barracuda. I'm just going to call her that now. You can't stop me. Leaving the burden of proof on Tattletale and leaving it up for her to decide if she would want verification. I was indeed Bug. The reply came only 2 or 3 minutes later. It was fast enough that I couldn't imagine Tattletale taking the time to check and double-check every aspect of her message the way I had mine. That's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like a fan wiki. Does she just have that sitting open somewhere? Like, it's so, like, she wasn't even expecting Bug to see it. This is a fishing expedition. Maybe this person will see my message. It's very not only is it strange that it's strange in the first place that Bug ended up finding this. I'm calling her Bug. It's strange in the first place that Taylor ended up finding this. But I mean, obviously that's fine. That's the plot. But it's weird that she replies instantly, like she was expecting it. Like, why would she expect it? Proof. Last night you didn't say anything until I asked your name. Big guy had a mess of nasty bites and you pepper sprayed him, and I told my pal G that when he asked. Good enough? GR and me will meet you at the same Gru, Regent, and Tattletale will meet you at the same spot we crossed paths last night. K. Don't have to get gussied up if you catch my drift. Rest of us will be in casual wear. If we meet at 3, will that give you enough time to get there from the library with everything you need? Let me know. Ta-ta. Tattletale. Ta-ta. Oh yeah, that's... Okay, I like that. That's clever. I genuinely really like that. Okay, you won me. You got me, McRae. You got me liking something again. And obviously, what we touch on immediately is the fact that she knows Taylor's in the library. Why? More to the point, how? Had I unwittingly entered an online exchange with a savvy hacker? Getting some of that early 2000s again. I knew my way around computers. My mom had made sure I had one. My mom had made sure I had one since before I could read and write. Why would you need one before you could read or write? But I would be lying if I said I could tell if I was being hacked or do anything about it. I would edit that sentence a bit. I would have... My primary goal was to gather information on them, and here I was getting a chance to see them with their masks off. It was too good to be true, which made me wonder what kind of safeguards they had in place to protect themselves. And at this point, they clearly know who you are, so like you're stuck. You're kind of committed to getting them in jail one way or the other. Although I do expect a really good explanation on how they pulled that off and knew that she was at the library. I guess they're going to say they tailed her home that night and watched her and said, okay, we know who you are. It's the only explanation. Which, if that's the case, why would their method of contact being a message board they may or may not have seen? Maybe she just, like, picks up her bag from being bullied and sees there's a message in it. There's a handwritten note. Someone was around her. Like, something like that, where it's like, we're utilizing the unique thing we use to track you to get in contact. Whatever. Okay. And she runs through the scenarios of, here's the reasons why it would be a good thing to throw them in prison, obviously. But then, much respect, she thinks of the downsides. If I didn't go, what would happen? This particular window of opportunity would likely pass as far as being able to get the dirt on Tattletale and her gang. That was okay, as I thought on it. It was a high-risk, high-reward venture anyway. Taking that path would mean turning down the meat, MEET. They didn't offer steaks. Then killing time for the rest of the afternoon, trying to avoid dwelling on the fact that I had missed 2 straight afternoons of classes and might maybe miss more. It was depressing to think about. Okay, maybe not so great. I was really expecting her to have that thought process of they clearly know who I am and are tracking me. The downside would be I'm just completely at their mercy. And then the meeting is set. So we end this novel read along, web novel read along, with just, I don't know, summary of today was she did school stuff and did home stuff. Her dad, he's got some characteristics. but I don't like him, and she needs a spine. Although that's a fun sort of parallel if we're going to draw literary symmetry here, where her dad doesn't have a spine and she doesn't have a spine. She is her father's son. Her father, no. Yeah, mostly just spending time on, because we already established the bullying stuff, so we've established that. We have a sense of her dad's character, and yes, it built it up a little bit, but it wasn't like enough to justify new material to talk about his character. And then, yeah, outside of that, it's just we get to read some Wikipedia entries, but nothing super interesting there. And we do end on a very plot-driven way forward here, where she's meeting the bad guys, which I would have liked to happen sooner, but it's happening. So join me again if I do another one of these in 6 months or whenever I do it. I don't keep a schedule anymore because everything's a nightmare and every piece of technology I own breaks. So goodbye. And if you're listening at the end, I really like doing these, just the web novel read along format in general. I don't know, I just really like having people read stories to me, and it's fun to do the opposite. So if you have any advice for improvement, any comments, critiques, or concerns, feel free to tell me, because I have no idea what I'm doing and would like to be better if possible. But mostly I'm just doing this because I enjoy it. So suck on that.